Good morning, dearest friends. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, August 2nd, the 5th of Av. Hey Av. Hey Av happens to be the Yortzeit of a significant tzaddik and all-time Torah influencer, one of the all-time Torah influencers. It is the Yortzeit of the Arizal HaKadosh. The Arizal, the founder of the School of Lorian Kabbalah, as an academic might describe it. And he truly, almost all Kabbalistic schools of thought and yeshivot and Hasidic machshava as well is deeply influenced by the Arizal. A lesser known fact about the Arizal is he passed away in his mid-30s. He only really, to my knowledge, only was the position, in his position as primary macher teacher in Sfat, which was at the height of the community of Sfat and the Torah scholarship, both in halacha and Kabbalah, for I think two and a fraction years, two years and change. And it's a reminder of the degree of impact a person can have, and it's a tragic reminder of how much more he might have. Well, obviously Hashem has a plan, but the point is to have so much influence in such a short lifespan. One could imagine, what it might have looked like if it's otherwise, but it's a reminder of his greatness. So that's first of all. Interestingly enough, that Arizal initially, his students were the ones that transcribed his teachings, and initially his students were not meant, or they understood they were not meant to disseminate his teachings beyond the inner circle. And actually one of his main students, Rabbi Chaim Vital, actually took all the writings, which were the Kisvei Arizal, his writings, and he hid them. And I think it was his son, Shmuel Vital, who had a dream or multiple dreams where his father, if I recall correctly, maybe a little more complex than that, basically urged him to exhume those writings and to publish them. And ultimately, that's what becomes a well-known series of Svarim called Kisvei Arizal. So very interesting and challenging to understand ideas. He speaks of deep Kabbalistic ideas and some of the ideas that are a little less, a little more popular, let's say, is the teachings of Gilgulim, of the reoccurrence of neshamis. The Arizal is also famous for, I don't know if he developed, but certainly was a big proponent of the discussion of the Nitzutzot, that when Hashem created the world, he created a earlier iteration called Tohu. Again, I'm highly simplifying it. And that was not a sustainable dimension, and it, so to speak, combusted, it blew up, and the sparks, Nitzutzot, the high Kedusha from that dimension fell into this world and are concealed, covered up, and it's a lot of holy energy, if you can call that. And when we do certain mitzvot or engage in this world in a holy way, so we extract those sparks and restore them to their proper place and have, so again, a highly simplified presentation of the idea, but the point is, that's another famous idea of Lorian Kabbalah that is very popular and well known, and translating it into more contemporary terms is something that I think is a highly well-known and well disseminated idea within modern Jewish thought. The idea that every place that one goes and every opportunity, we don't just do a good deed, but we actually interact with the space and find latent kedusha or latent opportunities wherever we go. And that's, of course, an empowering and another teaching of the Arizal. But there are vast works based on the writings of the Arizal, including much of Hasid, the Chabad Hasidus is also deeply influenced by what we call Lurian Kabbalah. And now I want to mention a dedication, and then we're going to jump right into our Gemara, where I'm going to share an embarrassing mistake I made yesterday. So stay tuned. Today we're going to dedicate our learning to a dear friend. His name's Morty Gleit. His Hebrew name is Mordechai Leib Ben Dov. He passed away, I think it's 5 years now or 4 years. And so we'll dedicate today's learning to his memory, and we'll let his wife, Kitty, know that we're dedicating a learning. And I'm sure it should bring a degree of nechama and bracha to the family. So that is today's dedication. So we begun discussing activities that either are rabbinically prohibited or in some instances actually permitted, namely laboring. So helping an animal in labor. So the Mishnah says, Messiahin loy, we can, or Messiahin, we can help, but we're not Miyaldin, we don't do the actual delivery. And of course, the next part of the Mishnah, which is the important part of the Mishnah, is that for a human, for a birthing person, for a mother in labor, we will do just about anything for her medical care, but even just for her comfort, to put her at ease, we'll do just about anything short of, well, no. However, some of the malachas, as we saw yesterday, we asked to do with a shinoi. And we discussed bringing oil to turn on the light, and the Gemara says, even if she is blind, we still want to put her at ease, that she should know that the people around her can see and can care for what is needed. I suppose the question we can ask is, if she's blind, how does she really know if the light is on? Maybe you could just say the light is on and the lights are off. Well, one answer might be that legally blind may leave one with the ability to see some kind of light. And so maybe the person can detect there is light. Alternatively, the sources of light in the time before ours created a lot of heat. And so one would be able to sense the heat generated by the lantern or the lamp. And so whatever the specifics are, it is evident to her, or rather it provides comfort, and therefore we are permitted, and not only permitted, we should accommodate her in manners necessary. Dr. Stamler asked a question. We know that for Pikuach Nefesh Redocha, we push aside all matters of Chilul Shabbos. So why here are we doing it with a Shinoi? Doctor, did you ask that question?
I think he did.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
He did.
However, I accept the fact that our comfort is not a question of pikuach nefesh. So there would be a difference.
So first of all, the doctor says that we might distinguish between comfort and actual pikuach nefesh, but I see elsewhere, and it's going to in the Achronim, it's in the halachic discussion. It's deeply discussed that there is a difference between Leda and a genuine pikuach nefesh. During childbirth, a person is extremely vulnerable, medically vulnerable, and especially in times past, there is a tragically high mortality rate of mothers giving birth. And I, just based on a brief, a nominal awareness of my own family tree and talking to others, it's almost impossible to have anybody in this room, or any person that has a family tree that goes more than 2 generations past, that is not going to see complexity as a result of death in childbirth. In other words, in times past, in most people's family trees, there are half siblings. Go back 2, 3, 4 generations, and it's inevitable. And much of that has to do with, there's other reasons why people were vulnerable, and there's other types of mortality, but I believe the most common was death in child labor. And so it truly was pikuach nefesh, and even till recent times, and even to today, of course, it's one of the most vulnerable, medically vulnerable situations a person could be in. Professor, you were going to say something?
I just wanted to say that an example is Rachel, who died at the childbirth.
So you're saying even biblically, we're deeply aware of this mortality, Rachel passing in child labor. Yeah. As a matter of fact, one might say that there are relatively few instances of death in child labor relative to the degree of risk and probably the prevalence. However, it should be noted that we have an odd disappearance of most of the females in the family of Yaakov Avinu. When by the time the Jews go down to Mitzrayim, we know Rachel passed away, but where's Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah? There's no reference. And I think an understanding is they'd passed. And so what is the difference? Why are the males living so much longer than the females? I'm sure there are many different theories. And of course, there are other theories that say that they were present and just didn't get referenced. And well, I'm feeding a lot of red meat to contemporary discussion about balance. And I'm not saying it's not a fair conversation. I'm just saying that it's not fair to project modern sensitivities into a time past.
Yaakov said that he buried Leah in
Mars,
so she died earlier. Yeah.
So why is Leah? So Professor, you're extricating me from the mess that I made for it. So it's quite possible that the issue here is about lifespan and mortality, and mortality, and it's possible that part of it is associated with child labor, or maybe the toll that it took on people's lives, or maybe there were other hazards that I don't know. So, anyways, but what I wanted to say is I saw, and I think this is a fairly common idea, that on child labor, notwithstanding, that's what I was trying to say, notwithstanding the hazards and the genuine risk and the prevalence of death and mortality associated with child labor, it is still part of a natural process. And it's not the same degree of sakana, let's say, as drowning at the sea or being trapped under a collapsed building. The person is vulnerable, the birthing mother is vulnerable, but it's part of nature, and it's not quite necessarily the degree of pikuach nefesh as a person facing a firing squad or drowning at sea, etc., etc. The process is not intended. It's not a process that leads to death. It's a process that leads to giving to birthing life. Unfortunately, it's a very risky, painful, and puts a person in a lot of jeopardy. But perhaps because it's not exclusively sakana, or it's not exclusively pikuach nefesh, there's at least an attempt to make a shina where possible. But certainly, if that's not possible, we would be mechal Shabbos to provide. So that might be another distinction between typical or regular pikuach nefesh and this instance. Now I'm going to share the Gemara. I'm going to show you my embarrassing mistake. Here we go. So yesterday we were talking about how we should bring, if a person is laboring and she wants light, even if she's blind, we accommodate her, but we try to carry it in an atypical manner. And I showed you in Rashi, either she carries it in her hand, as the Gemara says, or she carries it in her hair. And then trying to get ahead of things, I showed you the Rambam who says that you should carry it with a kli. I said, oh, it's a machlokas, Rashi and Rambam. That was my embarrassing mistake. Of course, had we allowed ourselves to read a few lines further, we would have seen that the Gemara itself makes that distinction. And so we don't need to turn this necessarily into a machlokas, Rashi and the Rambam. And that's a reminder of the wisdom of reading the text of the Talmud before looking into later texts. It might allow us to have a greater accurate take on the Talmud's opinion. So that's my mistake. I'm sharing it with you so we can learn from each other. Here we go. Amar Mar, quoting our Mishnah, saying that you bring the candle. Gemara asks Pshita, isn't it obvious? Pikuach nefesh, you could do anything to help with the care and treatment of the birthing mother. And of course, you need to have the lights on to be able to properly care for her. No, we're talking about a blind person. She can't see. Maybe it's also and more so. Maybe there's enough light, sunlight, I don't know, for the folks delivering to see. They don't need the light on. She wants extra light. We'll do whatever we can to calm her down. Or maybe it's in the nighttime and she's not actively laboring. And so the medical professionals don't think the light needs to be on, but she's anxious that the light should be on so that she could be cared for immediately when it is needed. We pointed out yesterday from Tosis that there's an important effort to create as calm and relaxed an environment for a mother who's laboring. Now the Gemara asks, if she needs oil, she brought it, the friend brings it in her hair. This is not in the Mishnah, but it's quoted in the Gemara. If she needs oil, the Gemara asks, this should not be okay. Isn't this ringing out? Are you allowed to wring out liquid from something that contains it? Can you dig a shmata, a rag, into oil and wring it out, or water? It's schita. Let's read Rashi. Lama lo hivia lo b'kli. She should certainly have to use a kli. Shaloi techal Shabbos b'itza. Achenami hakam achal b'schita. You think you're avoiding chil Shabbos by putting it in your hair instead of carrying it? Well, you've solved one problem by creating another problem. That is question of our Gemara. Gemara answers, Rabba Rav Yosef, Damitar Vayu, we have a joint common response from Rabba and Rav Yosef, which is Ein Schita B'Seyar. Rabba and Rav Yosef say, Schita, bringing out, this does not apply to hair. Rashi Ein Schita B'Seyar, Shukasha Ve'ein Boileya. The hairs themselves don't absorb liquid. They contain it, but
Rabbi,
it's not.
I can't hear you well. There's too much background noise.
I will hit mute all. And I'll invite everyone to unmute for questions or comments. And Alan, if you hear more background noise, remind me again and I'll mute everybody all again. But I hope everyone will unmute to dialogue and to engage in the conversation. So, Rabbi and Rav Yosef are of the opinion there is no such thing as schita. Schita means wringing out. You're not allowed to do schita, wringing out of liquid on Shabbos. But your hair, the fluids that are caught up in your hair, in this instance, oil, this is not considered schita. Rav Ashi says no. Afilu tema yesh schita b'seir. I could tell you that even if you suppose that wringing out, which is prohibited on Shabbos, cannot transpire in one's hair, meaning it's usur, what we mean to say when we say you carry the oil in your hair, mevia la b'kli derech sara, you carry the dish, the bowl, the bottle of oil in your hair. The kama the because we try as much as possible to carry and provide for this birthing mother what she needs, but with a shinoi. Rashi, what is there? You wrap it up in the hair. So now, let's go back to the Rambam. Why does the Rambam translate that you wrap it in your hair? Probably because the Rambam paskins very strictly that you're not allowed to do schita b'seyar. You're not allowed to wring out hair. So he does not take the explanation of Rabbi Rav Yosef. The Rambam takes the second explanation, which is that you could wrap it in a kli in your hair. Do all the halachis agree with this? Let's see. Here's the code of Jewish law. The Shulchan Aruch says the same thing. A mother in childbirth is kichayla sheish b'sakana. We consider her like a sick person whose life is in danger. And we desecrate Shabbos. Again, this is exactly what we read in our Gemara. You call a midwife, you can intervene and help and assist in laboring to the maximum. There's no restriction. We light a candle for her, even if she's blind. As much as possible, we do it with a shinoi. You have to bring her something. The Shulchan Aruch quotes how you would tie it up in the hair, similar to the Rambam. So it seems like halacha l'maisa, the way we understand the Gemara is we don't expect you to dip your hair in oil, but you could tie up, loop around, and transport a kli in one's hair. Give me another moment. Here we go. This is Siman Shin Lamed, Halacha Aleph, and this is again the halachas of a Yeledes on Shabbos. Oh, sorry. Really, just a moment. Okay, here he asked the question that I asked, that we were asking from the Levush. It says, that you could Michal Shabbos even if she's blind. So he asked, I lost the place, hold on one second. He asked a good question. Don't we need it for everyone else? Anyways, maybe like we answered. that we don't need to see at the time. I'm really looking for the Mishnah Brura, but I opened this the wrong way. Hold on one more second, then we'll move on. We'll go to the Magen Avraham first. Kasha, Yaimer b'fanei adlikun ha'ner v'tis yashiv daita. Just lie to her. After me, Kalmakam Hiroya, Mara Ner. And the Magen Avraham answers my answer. Maybe, okay, thank you. Maybe she is legally blind, but she can see light. She could test them to see if they actually can now see. So we're assuming this is a clever woman. People that are unfortunately blind, like many people that have different handicaps, usually develop strengths in other systems. And so the Magen Avraham says you can't just lie to her. She'll find a way to ascertain if you're being honest about the lights being on or not. So this is, I think this is along the lines of what we theorized here. And then he says, why does the Gemara talk about calming her down? We need to see, because we need to see. If we're providing care, we need to be able to see. Now let me show you one more thing. Dr. Stamler, I gave you an explanation about why we try to do a shinoi. So here the Magen Avraham asks our question. It is a natural, it's part of a natural process. And there's only a relatively small number of people that die in child labor. One is too much, but therefore we added just one extra dimension to make a shinoi. So that's that. And one last, now that we saw now the Mishnah Brura. Check this out. We are Mechal Shabbos, but we're not looking to be Mechal Shabbos. So the Mishnah Brura says, a woman who arrives near her due date should arrange as much as possible to have the stuff ready, so that they don't have to do as much Chil Shabbos as possible. Of course, ultimately, whatever is needed, and you could do it. Mishnah Brura says the same thing. Why does a blind person need light? Either she knows that she'll get optimum care, and it calms her down. And then he quotes the Magen Avraham. Although usually you shouldn't need to do a shinoi for pikuach nefesh, here it's a natural process. This is quoting the Magen Avraham. This is a very important caveat. This is a very important asterisk, and then we'll jump into the Gemara. When do we say to make a shinoi? Only if the process is not slowed down. But if in the attempt to make a shinoi, you're going to slow down her care, so this is a very important note. We say to make a shinoi if you can, but if it's going to hinder the care or it's going to diminish the care, then you should do it without a shinoi. Quoting here the Chidush Iran and in other places. So this is a very important.
Actually, with regard to for a blind woman lighting a candle, it doesn't have to be for her. In order for her friends to help her in the darkness, they need light.
Right.
So you need to light the candle. It is for the yoledet, but it's really for but even though she's blind, her friends need the light to be able to help her.
So my understanding of the Gemara is that her friends determine they don't need a light right now, but she wants to be certain that they can see, or something to that effect. Even when it's not needed, we still provide it for her because it gives her, it makes her feel more calm. But you're right.
Can you hear me?
Hold on, but Doctor, you're correct that in most circumstances, the light is not just to aid the mother in labor; it's to help those that are caring for her. So then it would be even more permissible. Reb Beryl.
Yeah. So if you can hear me, there's also a very big difference, because when we're treating somebody giving birth, when we start the process, there is no danger to that person. And it's sort of an intermediary step.
You're saying the
Not
process.
not all women that are giving birth are in danger.
That's true, but we don't know that beforehand.
No, exactly. So that's why we can't just use pikuach nefesh, because at that point we're helping somebody who's not in immediate danger.
The eyes of halacha, we afford any person that's going to begin labor the presumption, for the sake of their care, we're going to treat them as if they have a sakana, even though many won't. Baruch Hashem. But we will.
Yeah, no, that was Menachem's question. What's the difference? So prevention is not pikuach nefesh. And
Right.
maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not being clear.
Yeah, you're explaining what we said. Regular sakana is sakana. A person's drowning, they're drowning. The odds are, if we don't save them, they're going to die. Person in childbirth, the odds are, if we're playing a numbers game, if you're playing roulette, more likely than not, they're going to survive the ordeal. But it's still very dangerous, and there's a lot of risk, and there's a lot of pain and potential for things to go south. And so therefore we do afford care, and we give the presumption of pikuach nefesh. But according to some, the reason why we even think about shinoi is because there is a difference, which is Beryl, what you're explaining. It's not primarily the process of death, it's the process of birthing. Unfortunately, a number of people pass in child labor. By the way, another instance, I think the Rambam famously, his mother passed according to lore in childbirth, and many others. All right, now let's continue the Gemara. Shkoyach, Rebbe Nachem, Shkoyach. Alan, you're muted, but if you want to say something, we still don't hear you, even though you're not muted. There's something wrong with maybe your headphones aren't plugged in. I think now you are plugged in. Go ahead.
Okay. The same thing is if somebody is drowning, if somebody seems to be going over a waterfall and you dive in to save him, you don't know whether he could just land in the water if he goes over the fall. The problem is you don't know. He might even hit a rock when he falls.
You're asking the question of, if it's risk your life to save someone else from jeopardy? Is that your question?
Yeah, you don't know.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
So the same in childbirth, you never know.
Well, no, because when you're helping a person in childbirth, you're not jumping off a waterfall, and there's no hazard to the friends and family. The physician, it doesn't have much risk, to my knowledge.
There's a problem with light. There might be a problem with light.
But that's not a hat. Our point is, even something that doesn't necessarily mean hazard, or isn't necessarily going to save the life of the person in labor, we yet are Mechal Shabbos to provide for her comfort and security. That's all we're saying. Make sense? But you're asking another question, which we're not going to address now, but it's a good question, which is, are you allowed to put your own life at risk to save another person's life? God forbid, you see someone being mugged or held up at gunpoint, do you rush in to save that person's life, even though there's a chance that you could lose your life? Is there a difference between a military and someone that's trained to do that and a civilian? Many other very good questions that will go onto our long list of items that we'll have to revisit. But it is a good question. Now let's continue the Gemara. What and when is the woman classified as in labor? Which is another question that I think someone just now referenced. Child labor doesn't start out as a dangerous proposition, but at some point it could become dangerous. So my comment was that we afford all of the conveniences, I don't use the word luxury, but all of the care, even though we know that there are good odds that everything's going to turn out okay. But at what point is a person considered in labor, and when are they entitled to all of the Chilul Shabbos care that we're talking about? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. And we remember Shmuel was a physician. So it's helpful to bear that in mind. Chaya, a woman in labor, calls man she'akever pasuach. So long as the womb is open, Bein amra tzricha ani, bein lo amra tzricha ani. Whether she asks for something, chilul Shabbos, bein lo amra tzricha ani, or even if she does not think she's in danger, mechalelin aleha es Shabbos, we do everything to save her. Rashi, chaya is a yoledes. Chaya is another word for a person that is laboring. Kever is a description for the womb, Beis Harechem, which is interesting. I'm not fresh on this, so I'm not going to be able. The Ben Yoyada, I'm sure, would comment on this. Kever is the word that has two meanings. It means where a person comes into the world, and it also means like a grave where a person goes to at the end of their life. So it's interesting that from Kever to Kever, anyways, there's more to be said on that, but I don't have any of the sources in front of me. So the word kever is a euphemism for the womb, or maybe it's the Hebrew word for womb, but it is also the word for kever, for a grave. So if the womb is open, which I guess means I don't know if it's a degree of dilation, we'll see soon, or if it means that the baby is actively passing through the birth canal. Let's see what Rabbi Steinsaltz says. Generally, a woman in childbirth is in danger, and the prohibited labor may be performed. Nistam kever, once the baby comes through the canal, birthing canal through the womb, and it closes, when she's in labor or mechal Shabbos, no matter whether she asks or not. Once she is done birthing, we no longer can extend to her the accommodations, the care of Chilul Shabbos. Hold on, I want to see if I can get anything for you on Kever. No. By the way, we've turned the page now to 129a, Kuf Chaf Tes, Amud Aleph. So the Gemara is going to continue to discuss this. The Gemara is going to explain what does it mean the womb is open and closed. Ravashi explained as follows. Marzutra explained the Gemara like this, the halacha as this. I'm sorry, Rav Ashi explained as above. Marzutra has another way. I'm Rav Yehuda Shmuel, same teaching with a little bit of a different version. Chaya, a person in labor, Kozman shekever pasuach, so long as the womb is open, bein amra tzrichani, bein amra ein tzrichani, whether she says or not, mechal nasa Shabbos. Nistam kever, once the womb has closed, amra tzrichani, mechal nasa Shabbos. This new version, the way Marzutra presents it, after the womb is closed, she has to ask for Chilul Shabbos. But if she does not ask, lo amra tzrichani, ein mechal nasa Shabbos. So Marzutra's version of the teaching of Shmuel is more permissive. Now we need to figure out. Ravina tells Maremar, Marzutra masing lekula. Marzutra's version essentially gives us a strong leniency that even after the womb has closed, whatever that means, we still afford Chilul Shabbos if it is needed. But Rav Ashi was the original version, is more restrictive. So the question that Ravina asked Marimar is Hilchasa Keman. How do we paskin? Are you ready for this? Amar Lei. The response that was forthcoming was Halacha Kemar Zutra. We follow the more lenient version because Safik Nefashais Lehakel. Whenever there's a question of life and death, we always err on the more lenient position on the matter. Therefore, in this instance, Safik Nefesh Lehakel, and we further extend life-saving or general care to the birthing mother even after Nistam Akever, the womb has closed. We still don't know what that means. So the Gemara is now going to discuss. Any questions or comments thus far? Now I'm going to rely fairly heavily on Rabbi Steinsaltz's translation here. And let's see. What does it mean that the womb has opened? So is it a dilation thing? Is it the baby is actively passing through the birth canal? Amar Abaye says, Misha, Sheteshav ala mashber. The moment that the mother in labor sits on the mashber. The mashber is I don't know if it's a
I would
stool
call
or
it a
chair,
birthing stool.
birthing stool or something to that effect. I don't know why they call it the travailing chair. But yes, birthings. Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua, Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua says, Misha Shadam Shoises v'Yored. It's from when blood flows and descends. The Amrila, others say, it's at the point where friends carry her, she can no longer support herself during labor. Rashi, so three opinions: either she sits on the birthing stool, or blood begins to flow downwards, or she is unable to stand. Three different definitions of psichas hakever. So this is the beginning. From these points, this point, she receives all of the care, all of the Chilul Shabbos care that we are describing. Ad masai psichas hakever, until when is she considered in active labor? Until when do we extend all of the care of Chilul Shabbos? Amar Abaye shleisha yamim. Abaye says this extends 3 days. Rava Amar Mishmei Rav Yehuda Shiva. Rava says 7 days. The Amri La Shloishim. Others say Shloishim. So I bet you were surprised. Sheena. I bet you were not expecting the time to be that long. Professor, what did you expect it to say? No expectations.
No, I don't have an opinion on that.
My wife essentially just explained that none of us are entitled to have an opinion.
Okay.
But we're
I
allowed to have an
didn't wait for
opinion.
my wife to do that.
We're allowed to have an opinion as to what we anticipated from the Gemara, and I think we'll agree that the Gemara affords a relatively generous period of time where the woman is afforded the care needed, and is presumed to still need extra medical care and intervention, even to the point of Chilul Shabbos. So that's the point that we see over here. Amri Narda, the Narda people say, the Chacham of Narda say, Chaya Shloisha Shiva Ushloishim. There are three halachically relevant times or amounts of time, benchmarks in childbirth. Shloisha, Shiva, Shloishim. 3, 7, 30. Shloisha, the first 3 days, Bein Amar Tzrichani, Bein Amar Lo Tzrichani. Whether she says that she needs Chilul Shabbos or not, Mechalan Alas Shabbos. We will yet be Mechal Shabbos. Shiva, 7 days, until 7 days. Amra Tzrichani, Mechal Alas Shabbos. If she says she needs help, she needs Chilul Shabbos, we do. If she says, Lo Tzrichani, I don't need, Shloishim Yom, after 30 days, Afilu Amra Tzrichani, even if she says she needs Chilul Shabbos, Ein Mechalen Alas Shabbos, we no longer are doing Chilul Shabbos, but we can yet have a Gentile do Malach. Rashi, who's Kuruba Lechila Kalacha is Chilul Shabbos?
You can always have a Gentile do. I guess here it's Ba'amira Lebo even.
Yeah, we're talking about Amir La'akum. You're allowed to instruct a Gentile to do Chilul Shabbos. Now, hold on 1 second. I want to back up. Let's look again in the Shulchan Aruch. I clicked on the wrong button. Hold on, Shulchan Aruch. Nikras Yeledes, the Chilul Shabbos. How long is she considered in childbirth? from the point that she begins laboring. So it looks like the Shulchan Aruch paskins that we could rely on all or any of the three opinions, because I suppose every person labors differently. And the point that we're making here is whether you don't have such extreme symptoms, but you're ready to actively labor, or blood, maybe we might call this her water's breaking, I don't know, or if she can no longer support herself. All of those are serious symptoms that the woman is now deserving and in need of extra medical care. Shulchan Aruch again includes all of them. Let's see if this is the same. Yeah, Kol Shloisha Yamim, Rishonim, all the first 3 days. Afilu Amra Ina Tzricha. She says, "Oh, I don't need it. I'm fine." Mechalas HaShabbos, Mishloisha Zayin Amra Ina Tzricha Mechalan. Until from 3 to 7, we listen to what she says. Mikan ve'elech afilu Amra Tzrichani ein Mechalas HaShabbos. Ella Harei Hi Ad Shloishimim Kechel Shem Yisakana. So for the first 3 days, we don't even ask her. 7 days, we ask her. We take her opinion seriously. And then until 30 days, we understand that she's still considerably in a considerably weakened medical state, but she's a chayla shein sakana. You could ask a Gentile to help her, but not more than that. To see if the Rambam has anything else to add. All right. So there we have this very important and relevant halachas of childbirth. The Gemara continues. It says, "Kid the Rav Ula Brei the Rav Eloi." The teaching about having a Gentile to assist is consistent with the teachings of Ula Brei the Rav Eloi. Amar, he taught, all the needs of an ill person are accommodated, are cared for by can be accommodated or cared for by an Armaya, Gentile on Shabbos. And this is consistent with Rav Amnuna taught that anytime it's a chayla shein sakana, person is sick, but there's not life-threatening circumstances, so we have a Gentile do the malacha. Rashi calls her chayla for at least 30 days. The presumption is that the person who just gave birth is not well. A person who, even if they don't receive intervention, their life is not in jeopardy, but it is necessary for their care. So a Gentile can do so. So obviously, again, a person's life is in danger. We are mechabel Shabbos. We don't ask a Gentile. We don't hesitate. We don't wait. If it's a matter of, if it's part of her care, but not, if it is not, if her life is not in risks, and so then you could have a Gentile physician do so.
Rabbi,
Yes.
is it understood when, during the time when she's allowed to be Mechal Shabbos, and she has the option of calling a Gentile, and there would now be no difference really in terms of timing, in terms of the emergency of it? Is there any indication of it being more desirable for her not to be Mechal Shabbos?
That is a good question. So what you're asking is, in the time period where she's entitled to Chilul Shabbos, but the actual care we're saying is not really life and death, should we prioritize a Gentile over a Jew or not?
Right.
That's a good question. I don't know. My suspicion is if all things are really, really equal, then I guess you could call a Gentile. But if there's going to be any kind of hesitation or hint, or then you should just use a Jew. This is consistent with what we said about doing the shinoi and not. But if the shinoi is going to slow things down, then just do it the way one is allowed to.
Is there a difference between the Yoledet herself being Mechalel Shabbos and someone else being Mechalel Shabbos for her.
If it's part of her care, I don't believe there's a difference. You know where this is relevant, and I'm not saying this halacha l'maisa, but I'm pretty sure this is the halacha. A hospital bed needs adjusting. You need to get up and eat or drink, or they encourage women after child labor to help them get up or to get circulation. So in the first 3 days, if it's Shabbos, or maybe even more, can the yoledes use the electric buttons to adjust their chair? It's a simple instance where it could have a, there are other such scenarios, let's say, but it's the nurse button. You need the nurse. Can you press the call button? And other kinds of things like that. Again, I'm not saying this halacha l'maisa, but it's pretty much a practical area where we could strongly be informed by this Gemara. And of course, driving to the hospital, or or if she only likes a specific chicken soup that's made by, her mother, can you drive? So again, it's not a halacha l'maisa, but things to consider that perhaps you'd be allowed to do based on this Gemara.
I think the issue with driving to the hospital is a important issue for doctors in terms of driving back from the hospital to the hospital. But
by the way, what I want to say, we're talking about doing a shinoi or whatever, or there's the famous anecdote about the guy who's the Rav in town is cited driving a sports car with the roof down, blasting, pop music on Shabbos, and it started quite a scandal. And they asked him what's going on. He said, my wife was in labor. I borrowed the neighbor's car. The cover was down. The music was blasting. I'm allowed to Michal Shabbos to get to the hospital, but I didn't need to shut off the music or to put up the roof. So we drove in style.
I had a friend here in Teaneck. He doesn't live in Teaneck anymore. Bernie, you knew him. Anyway, it was a Rosh Yeshiva. And when he took his wife gave birth on Shabbos. When he took her, he left his car right by the emergency room, did not park it, left it running, and left the doors open and just left it there. And his point was that, he could drive it there, but he couldn't shut it off, but he didn't feel he could shut it off and close the doors.
Right? I mean, today, Baruch Hashem, most hospitals, you have valets. So you can avoid that kind of concern of shutting. So I have had to take my daughter Brachi to the hospital on Shabbos more than one occasion. And so, or actually, no, what happened? Yeah. So I drove and I was able to bring the car to the valet, and the valet shut off. So I didn't have to shut off the car. That was that. And then in that particular instance, I was actually discharged on Shabbos, and the halachic guidance I received was because of her condition and because of circumstances, especially during COVID, I was advised that I should drive her home. And so what I did is I brought the car to the valet, to my building's valet, and the building valet shut it off. So there was definitely Chil Shabbos, but I tried to mitigate, where possible. So that's that. Now the Gemara asks an interesting question. We talk about that for 30 days. But in the 30 days, we didn't really give any license for anything. We just considered it a chayla she'ein sakana. L'may hilchasa, what is the halachically relevant reason to delineate 30 days? Amri Nardoi, the Nardoi, say l'tevila. To instruct a mother who has gone through labor to avoid going to tefillah, to mikvah. Rashi, ad laba yoim le'titol mepnei hatzina. For the first 30 days after child labor, she should not go to the mikvah because of cold. Rashi, a woman should not purify herself, does not purify herself through ritual immersion within 30 days of giving birth because she's in weakened state. Amar Rava says, Lo yamar el shein ba'ali ima. This is only if, for whatever reason, her husband is not home, and so she's going to mikvah l'taris because of a relevant for handling certain items in the time of the Beis Hamikdash that had to be handled or consumed with tahara. Baila ima, but if the husband is home, Baala Mechama, the husband will warm her up. I would imagine that probably today we might advise the opposite. But Baila Mechama la'achar tefila b'tash maguf mechama min haguf. Kiha debarte de Rav Chizda. We have a story of the daughter of Rav Chizda. Tavla b'gaitlasa yamin. She went to mikvah within 30 days. She went to the mikvah within 30 days and she became very cold. And the daughter of Chisda happens to have been the wife of Rava. Interesting wording here that they call her the daughter of Rav Chisda, not the wife of Rava. And she needed to be brought all the way to Pumbedisa to be warmed by her husband. I'm not sure what to say about that, but that's the Gemara here. That is that. What else can be done to warm and to care for a woman and child in labor? We make a fire. We light the fireplace to create warmth for a woman in labor. Can we infer from here that this is only done for a woman in labor, but not for another kind of sick person? And can we also infer, do we infer from here that this is only permitted in the winter, but not in the summer? The truth is no. The halacha is the same for a person who is in labor and a person who is not well. It doesn't matter if it is in the winter or the summer. If it's needed, if it's helpful, you can do something. As a matter of fact, even if it's the hottest time of the year, if a person became chilled as a result of another kind of whatever experience, we yet light a fire on Shabbos to provide warmth. An anecdote about the need for a fire after having bloodletting. Today, bloodletting is not very common, although we do blood donations. But once upon a time, it seems like bloodletting was one of the most fundamental medical interventions that were done. So here, Shmuel, Salachule tachtaka dishaga. There was no wood in the house, and so they broke up a wooden piece of furniture, lehesek b'yayim hakaza, to make a fire on the day that he let blood. V'tziva ubaku kisay shleitidar shuma'ula b'damim. They broke a high value. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's read over Steinel's here. They broke a wooden armchair made of teak, which apparently was a high quality product. And Rabbi Huda, tzalchule psur de yaina, they broke a bench. The Rabba, tzalchule sharshifa. For Rabba, they broke up they broke up ebony, I guess kind of wood. And for Rava, they broke up sharshifa. Long story short, fire was so needed that they didn't have time to go to the store to buy firewood. They took whatever furniture they had and they built and they lit it up. Steinsaltz, they needed to build a fire for the potential danger. They couldn't find firewood, so they kindled the fire with furniture. Hold on. To do so is baltashchis. We'd rather, what's even more important than preserving things is preserving medical wellness and health. And so, although true, we don't just break things in vain, but to have something destroyed, but to protect the body, that is permissible. And that's what Rabbi explained. Tomorrow we'll continue with a few more anecdotes on the subject of bloodletting and other medical areas. The primary discussion about childbirth and laboring has concluded. And again, of course, this is one of the very important Gemara's Masechah Shabbos that is applicable, and it's one of the areas where one is meant to be Mechal Shabbos whenever necessary. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. Another day of Gemara, another journey through the Talmud. I don't even know if I said that we're learning the entire Talmud one day, one page, one line at a time. This when we started. So I don't know. I might have to get fired. But anyways, wish everyone a wonderful day. Again, mentioning Mordechai Lev Ben Dov, whose Yortzeit is today. I'm praying for good health and well-being, all good things for the dear members of our Chabura, Ayasher Kayach.